welcome to the One Speed MMA podcast.
We're going?
We're going. You ready?
I'm so ready.
I'm not. Hold on.
That whole freaking weekend was just like
The freaking weekend.
it was MMA overload.
There was a little too much having 3 days in a row. Once again,
3 days, like 4 promotions. Well, there's probably even more than that. RFA was local.
so you had RFA, you had one, you had
5.
BAMA, you had
6.
WSOF, Bellator, and UFC. Yeah.
But I mean, Friday was crazy, and I found out the way to enjoy a Bellator 149 card. Do you know what that is?
Not watch.
Starting up a podcast and having conversations with people on Twitter about it. That is the way to do it, because that was so much fun.
Yeah, having a conversation on Twitter while the fights are going on is the best way to enjoy anything, really, because you get people that are just as irritated or mad at the card as you are, and then you can actually discuss your frustration.
Well, and then just the memes and the GIFs and just they're so good, man. And then they pick up things that you don't, as far as like if we're talking the it was the WSOF, the one that had the volleyball game in the background.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
I'm glad someone was like, I could actually talk to people. People were like, why does it sound like there's whistles going off in the background? And I could actually tweet back at them and be like, oh yeah, no, there's an actual volleyball tournament happening right next door.
I love the perspective from the volleyball game. It's like, if you want to see the other side of it.
There's all of these lights coming down.
Was so funny, man.
Yeah, I could only imagine having a volleyball game and hearing all the fight announcements and all of that. Like I just, apparently that Sportsplex is only $70 an hour to rent out.
I guarantee you next time they host a fight there, it is not going to be that much. I bet it's more than that for them.
Oh yeah, well, with all the issues. And apparently...
Was there issues?
No.
I just think that they realize they're going to get more money out of it. We didn't realize they were going to bring this many people.
There weren't that many people. They didn't even have bleachers.
But there was still there was probably 200, yeah?
Yeah. No, there's probably more than that. There was probably about 1,000.
And especially if you're going to have a volleyball game that family are at and you have UFC fans in the background. It's
yelling obscenities.
Yeah.
Get the F up. Knock him the F out. Yeah.
Stand him up.
No, yeah. It was weird. And the other thing hilarious. Yeah, the other hilarious thing was people tweeting out how empty it was within the first fights that were happening. So I missed I think 2 on that card, but I did watch some of the undercard. Pretty decent card. Not many major standouts on that card, but at the same time, what do you expect?
That spinning really? Back heel from Alvarez right at the whistle. Did you see that?
I missed that
dude,
one.
It was. I actually put it on our poll, and nobody voted for it
because no one saw it.
Well, and it wasn't a finish, and I actually kind of regret that.
The spinning way hit him in the nose.
No, it was right on the chin, and it was right at the end of the third round.
Are you talking? No, we're talking 2 different fights. I'm talking. Stevenson, Mickelson. I don't even remember. Hold on.
But the more
he did the spinning heel kick, spinning back kick, and he busted the guy's nose right at the bell.
Maybe that's what it was then, but it looked more like to me like he clipped him right in the jaw. He immediately started bleeding out of his mouth.
These dudes didn't. These had the whitest names you could think of. You know what I mean? This wasn't a Garcia or something like that. This was definitely a.
Well, going over that, the Moraes, new lightweight champion for World Series of Fighting, and those kicks looked brutal, man. Those things were ridiculous.
They were absolutely brutal. So, it's so weird how quickly that fight went. I mean, obviously, Moraes is tough as nails. It always looks like he's got makeup on. But he's getting paid $70. So he's getting $140,000 per fight. Oh no, it's great. Mm-hmm. He's the only one outside of the UFC that I think is getting paid that kind of money.
Fitch isn't even there. He's not getting paid that.
I don't know. I'd have to look up his last disclosed. But as far as I understand, Moraes makes the most out of everybody in
outside of the UFC.
WSOF.
Oh, going back to the Bellator fight, the one thing, some of the stuff that I kind of just wanted to touch on.
Right, before we move from Moraes, interestingly enough, that was his last fight contracted, and I don't think the WSOF has a champion clause, meaning if you're the champion, you can't leave. So the reason I brought up how much he's getting paid is there's a lot of discussion on whether he's going to leave to the UFC or not. And so, he talked about it with Ariel Helwani. he seems like he wants to go, but at the same time, I don't think they're going to be able to get the pay. So,
I mean, with the whole Conor thing, and then everybody going for Conor, like I don't think it's lucrative for him. I mean, what do I know? Like, I don't know, like, what opportunities he's being offered for sponsorships if he gets on a bigger scale. Like, there's so much I don't know, but I feel like if you're getting paid 70
plus sponsorships. I saw Rockwell again. It was really bizarre being like, oh, look, there's a Rockwell logo on those shorts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't at the RFA when you're talking. It was World Series of Fighting.
Yeah, it was World Series of
Fighting. Because RFA was here. And so...
RFA was here? Like Utah here?
Yeah, it was in Orem.
Why didn't we go?
That's what I was saying. Like, that's what I was going to say about the Bellator. Instead of watching Dada nearly die, we could have been at the RFA fights watching freaking helicopter arm bars.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that was here.
It was a UVU.
Interesting. The Bama fights were decent. They weren't. It looked like amateur fights. There wasn't anybody that I would be like, oh yeah, that guy needs a step up in competition, or like undercard fight. Mm-hmm. But it's good to see. British fighters getting showcased.
Did you just see the BBC Three picked up the UFC the UFC?
The UFC. I did see that.
That's really good, man.
There's also another rumor that Fox is going to buy the UFC. I saw it on, I think, the Underground or Sherdog. I doubt it, and that's a whole discussion for another time. But interesting times in MMA.
I wouldn't like that.
It'd be Viacom versus Fox.
It would be even more moving away from what I love about the UFC, or what I loved about the UFC, with it being like representative individuals instead of like the collective. Like, I don't know. Which kind of goes into what I was appreciative about Bellator about. Like, there was things about Bellator that I really enjoyed, that it was kind of back to the UFC of you representing your style, even though nobody wants to see those styles again. Nobody wants to see two street fighters go at it that are 240 pound plus.
Yeah, it is what it is. The hard part is like they were talking about, the rest of the card just didn't make sense. I mean, it made sense. Emmanuel Newton versus Vassal was a decent enough fight, but what is it accomplish? You know what I mean? Neither of those guys is going to get an immediate title shot. King Mo is fighting Phil Davis. Like, it doesn't, but that's it. When you only have 5 fighters, they're all going to fight each other until they get another title shot.
I think it means something for Campos. Beating Gallard's. I mean, but Gallard.
But Gallard's lost 2 in a row. He's got like 52 fights, and he hasn't looked that competitive in a while. So, yeah, it's great for him. It moves his career along. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it doesn't do much. And the thing...
We'll talk more about that fight too later on.
Later is the
headbutt.
The headbutt.
But also noted, like, Gallard did not look good. Like, because his thing is he's explosive, and he looked flat. Like, because he's actually one of my favorite fighters. Usually, if I see his name somewhere, even if it was Bellator, like, I really like watching him, and I've always kind of rooted for him to kind of get over the demons that he's had.
He reminds me of Rumble Johnson. Just not even a younger. They were about the same age, but somebody that has so much athletic talent, and not like in athletic talent, he reminds me of Rumble Johnson. Outside of the ring, he reminds me more of like a Chris Lieben. But
well, and that's the thing. He's so respectful and so nice, and like Chris Lieben. Like, if you listen to Chris Lieben, like if you're interested in what he's got to say, he could sit there and talk to you for hours. Him on MMA Insider with, I think it was Chris Bell, because they were just doing the new documentary, Prescription Thugs, and he was kind of the one that was looking into MMA and why they abuse prescription drugs and things like that. And so, like, he was so respectful talking to Baz Rutten. I don't know the other gentleman's name, and that's kind of what Gallard reminds me of. He just seems like he would be the nicest guy to like hang out with and stuff. And I just wish that I feel bad because the demons and stuff like that he's had with the cocaine. But on top of that, he's just an exciting fighter to watch. So even if he's in Bellator, I will still tune in and watch his fights.
And he hasn't said anything about the fight. If I was him and I watched it again, I mean, if Ken Shamrock can come out and be like, I lost because I got kicked in the crotch, it is what it is. I mean, that's one thing I've got to stop saying. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
We're going to start dinging me every time I say it.
Just slap you.
Like a Pavlov. It is what it is. No, that was one fight now that I saw how it ended. It could have been changed a little bit. The hard part too with that is the last two fights on that card overshadowed every good thing that could have happened.
But you know who was on point last week? We talked about this. Us.
And why is that? Why were we on point?
Because the weight cut, like, it just obviously, I mean, we had a conversation on our actual Twitter handles with my cousin, our good friend Todd Hare, about weight cuts. And he's saying that one is now, what is it? It's ONE FC, right? That's, I can't remember which promotion it was. I'm pretty sure it's ONE
FC. That
they are testing for dehydration, which I didn't know they could do.
They're testing how much water is found in the system. Yep.
And, which of course they can. I mean, I'm still for less regulation, and I think weighing in day of would cut back on that. But I mean, if we can, I still feel like they'll cut weight and just know like exactly where their water level's at. But regardless, something needs to be done if he's having kidney failure and his heart's stopping. And then it was a bad fight to watch anyway. No matter what way you look at it, entertainment, health, it's not good in any way, shape, or form.
And I just love how there's finger pointing everywhere. Well, the commission shouldn't have allowed it. Well, the promotion shouldn't have allowed it. No, you know who shouldn't have allowed it? The 2 million people that watched. If none of us would have tuned in, if we would have, as viewers, been like, we're not going to do this, it would never happen.
Well, at the same time, we didn't know. Like, we didn't know, you know? Like,
I blame you.
It's my fault.
Send your complaints to Karson Wood at
capital W_24.
Yeah, on Twitter. Yeah, no, it is what it is, and I blame a little bit of everybody.
I don't think like the 2 million people like you tune in, you expect to see two professionals going at it. Which I mean,
2 million people didn't. That's why they tuned in. You can't get 2 million people on any other that broke all of the records of every other TV fight that's been on. So that means you can't.
You know why?
In fact,
what you can't what?
You can't. What was I going to say?
I don't know.
Expect people to tune in. Expect people not to tune in.
Well,
I don't know where I was going. We'll have to listen to what you said.
No, my whole point was you can't expect 2 million people that are accustomed to watching professionals do their trade. Like, you can't expect them.
But not, I would guess 500,000 to maybe 1 million were actual MMA fans.
So, I mean, still, you don't, especially as an MMA fan, I mean, you occasionally see people not make weight, but they just lose 20% of their paycheck and it goes to the other guy. They still go on and fight just overweight, right?
Yeah.
Where we didn't know
the Cody Garbrandt fight.
Mm-hmm.
Garbrandt.
You don't that was a catch weight though.
Yeah, because the guy didn't make weight.
Who didn't? Because one was at 140.5 and the other one was 142.5.
Morris. So Cody. So I watched the post-fight press conference. We'll finish your thought and then we'll get into this.
So this is my thing. I don't think the 2 million people can be blamed for it. I mean, the 2 million people are to be blamed that Bellator did so good and that we bought into a bunch of 40-plus-year-olds fighting, which if that card would have happened, except for knowing that Dada could have almost died, I would have been against it. Other than that, I would have still tuned in. The promotions were A+.
I don't want to talk.
They were amazing.
I don't want to talk shit on the MMA community, but I'm going to take a little bit of time to, because this is a fight. Neither of these fights should have ever been put on TV. Yet,
disagree. But
there was more discussion being had about these two fights than anything. There's a million, and I think it's a WWE mentality of, oh man, it doesn't matter how old these guys are. It's just legendary. And it's like, your Ric Flairs and your Hulk Hogan's and all of those dudes that are 60 years old, Mick Foley's coming back to the WWE, where they're just doing athletic things, not legitimately like punching each other in the face and potentially causing major harm to each other at an old age. I think that fantasy of like, no, these people can do it at any age. I've seen it in WWE. That doesn't make sense to me in MMA. Those people are legitimately punching each other in the face. Those people can cause physical harm, weight cutting, training, all of those things can cause. I mean, Kevin Randleman died at 44 years old of heart failure after pneumonia. I mean, what's stopping Ken Shamrock, who fought in the same days and the same ages as Kevin Randleman, of having his heart stop in the middle of the octagon? But people want it because oh, it's just such a great fight, and it reminds us of UFC 1, and it was 23 years in the making, and and it's like, no, they're old. Quit giving them money to fight.
Why?
Because something bad is eventually going to happen, just like it almost did to Dada.
That was completely different, though, than age.
Yes and no. Because how many people have died from heart failure playing some kind of sport? Not a ton, but it happens in football, usually during practice or training of some sort. But when you're seeing these UFC legends die at a young age, there's a potential issue from the same people that fought at the same time that they did.
Well, I mean, we'd have to look at each individual case. Like you said, Randleman was from pneumonia.
But
it's not MMA related at all.
But we're talking heart failure. So eventually he got pneumonia and his organs would have eventually shut down.
Yeah, but anybody can die of pneumonia.
Understood. A 44-year-old man dying of pneumonia. It's not from
happens
I
all
understand.
the time.
It's not from MMA, and I'm linking the two matter-of-factly, and I shouldn't be. However, my point is there's a difference between Ken Shamrock and Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson, who's not quite 50, but he's up there. You look at those two, and there's just a whole different physical and athletic look to them. Dan Henderson looks like he's a decade younger. Ken Shamrock looks like he's a decade older. And a lot of that has to do with lifestyle, but that lifestyle can cause major issues.
And that's the thing, like, I understand, but if there are two adults, they are put money in front of them, I'm still interested. Like, I two practitioners of the sport that were ambassadors and represented it. I don't have a problem with people watching that. Like a blood sport, like street fighting, like Dada and Kimbo, yeah, that's kind of getting into weird territory.
But Kimbo had just beat Ken Shamrock.
Huh? He's a weight class above him.
I understand. We're not getting into the logistics. We're just saying that, like, Kimbo, who looked awful, beat Ken Shamrock.
Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, like, as far as
I hate it. I hate the spectacle.
So when do you cut it off?
Everyone has their own life and their own decisions to make. I'm not going to tell somebody, like, you cut it off. That's why they're not in the UFC, because Dana cut them off. Dana's like, you know what? I'm not going to let you fight anymore.
Well, because go ahead. Sorry.
But my thing is like you said, two grown men making their own decisions. You can't tell them no. As a promotion, the promotion and the athletic commission need to step up and stop those types of fights. Obviously, Royce Gracie's still running like 15 miles a day. That dude is in better shape than I will ever be in my entire life. But that doesn't mean one hard punch to the head's not going to knock him to death.
Again, that's anybody, though.
Yeah, no.
You're not putting him against young kids. You know, it's not like you're putting him in against, like,
John Jones.
Yeah, he's not coming.
They put him in against Matt Hughes.
When?
Almost a decade ago now. But still, it was Matt Hughes was on his way out, but it's still dominant. And Royce Gracie should have never came back.
I'm just saying, like, I understand why, but, like, I just want to know when you start regulating it then. And I don't have a problem with either party trying to make money. Again, I think in retrospect, the Kimbo Slice Dada it looked more like blood sport. I'm going to cut him. Like, and then he comes in like he's not regulated at all, drops 40 pounds of water weight and has kidney failure. Obviously, something needs to be done there. Something has to be done on weight cutting.
He was at 301 pounds. You want to know, talking about Dada 5000, and we should have brought this up last time. Totally respectable human being. He's got 2 degrees, 2 college degrees. Part of what he's doing, even though I think doing it the wrong way, but once again, that's opinion compared to whatever it is. Setting up street fights in the backyards to try and get gang members instead of shooting each other to just fight it out, and then giving those people a place to go and a way to make a little bit of money. Like watching the insider thing, the Bellator with him, I gained a lot of respect for him. After the fight, I lost a lot of respect for Bellator as well as the Texas State Commission. But for the fighters themselves,
I'm pretty much done with Bellator unless there is like a Gallard on it or something like that. I'm not really interested in their fights anymore.
Were they Phil Davis versus King Mo?
Yeah, kind of. Like, I've never really liked Phil Davis that much. Like, it doesn't interest me that much. Like, I'll watch it because I do this, right?
Yeah,
but other than that, like, if I'm not in the podcast, do you do it because you're an MMA fan? Probably not. Like, I don't really care that much.
Warren versus Caldwell. The Pitbull brothers are pretty awesome.
Pitbull's great. And then the
Henderson
other one
versus
is,
Khrushchev.
what's the welterweight? Oh my gosh, Askren. Is Askren still there?
No,
Or did
he's
he move?
he's a 1.
He moved to 1.
Yeah, he's been at 1 for a long period of time now.
1 seems more lucrative. World Series of Fighting seems more lucrative than Bellator at this point. Again, Bellator, they're more. It's kind of like a step into MMA. That's why when people are like, "I can't believe this. I'm a hardcore MMA fan. I can't believe you guys are watching this." And it's like you have to understand, like they do have a function. Like you said last week, the WWE, and then it's bringing over a lot of crossover fans into MMA. A step in that direction is Bellator, whether it's cheesy and kind of.
But the question is let's see how many viewers continue to watch with Galvao versus Dantes this weekend, or Warren versus Caldwell.
There won't be. But you kind of have that leader nail into it to start it off, right? The next time that there's a Conor McGregor fight on, or the next time, people are going to be more inclined to go with their friends and tune into an MMA fight because they've already been initiated. Initiating's a good portion of it. And again, it's kind of like WWE, Bellator.
But a lot of people said it's a step back because people that were watching UFC or watching MMA, for the first time, watching that aren't going to want to watch it again.
No, I disagree. I mean, it's a step back, yes, in some instances, and you will lose some to that, but there's no bad publicity. And if 2 million people are watching, even if like you have 50,000 come back, I mean, I don't know. There's no actual number that you're going to have on. It's you at least have that setup that it could bring people back again from different promotions like wrestling or stuff like that. They're now more inclined, I feel, to follow more legitimate UFC and see to like the unfortunate part is everything that they've done for legitimizing. That's what I feel like took a step back, and it's like, well, no, this is just human cockfighting, and they'll do anything to appease like the blood sport, and I get that to a certain extent, but I think they'll be more inclined to come to the UFC, see a more professional atmosphere, uniformed athletes, and things like that. They'll be more inclined to stay, in my opinion.
Now, if we talk professional, so we have the WSOF, and we've covered Bellator. UFC had several different things that didn't go well. Not for the fighters. Fighters did great. Undercard, Marianne Renaud and Ashley Evans Smith. Terrible decision.
Judges
2-1 easily for Renaud. Ashley Evans Smith got the decision. She was super humble about it. She was nice about it, but she shouldn't have got the win. She got dominated the first round and then didn't end up doing anything until about the third. That was really unfortunate. Late stoppages for both the Cody Garbrandt for what's the ref's name that did it? Nagasaki. What is his name?
Sorry, I had some coming out. I don't know.
Anyway, so the ref, the same ref
he looked good, by the way,
that we had for Cody. Okay, so let's get into that real quick. So late stoppage, Augusto Mendez. Apparently, Cody found out 2 hours before that Augusto was about 15 or 10 pounds overweight.
So that's why he stopped cutting.
So he stopped cutting.
Yeah, that's why I was like, because he weighed in at 140, 140.5. And then he was 142.5 is what I saw. And that's why they were saying a special catch weight. So when I heard Buffer say that, I just thought it was a catch weight fight.
Yeah. So, well, and
that makes sense.
And poor Cody was talking about how difficult it was mentally. Not only did he lose his opponent, but then he wanted to stay on the card, and then his next opponent didn't make weight. Like he was really nice. Said, I'm super glad that he was here. But talk about like just crazy things to have to worry about other than just fighting, like changing opponents, deciding to stay on a card, and then having your opponent miss weight. And yeah, he looked really smooth. Mendez didn't look good for an undefeated fighter. I'd like to see him. Obviously, I'm guessing he probably signed a 2-fight contract at least to sign up for, on 7 days notice. He was a BJJ world champion, I think that they were saying. I don't know too much about his background. But he didn't
look good.
No.
Cody was throwing good combos, man. That's what caught him initially, right?
Well, one of the things that caught him, I was watching the review or a play-by-play of this somewhere, and they said he Mendez faked a head kick, and when he tried to fake the head kick, he put his foot back down, and when he put his foot back down, that caused him to be off balance, and when he was off balance, that's when Cody rushed in and hit him left, right, left, right, and that's what put him down. And then, the referee and Nah, it's what is his name? He's one of the more normal, the more famous ones. Anyway,
Big John?
No, Big John was not on. He didn't do this one. Mario Yamasaki. He jumped in between them like he was going to stop it, and then he jumped back out. And Cody had to come in and dive in and finish him off, which was super bizarre. And then Donald Cerrone. Well, let's get to Derek Brunson versus Rowan Carnero, which was also just a one-sided beating by Derek Brunson, hitting him with the head kick, knocking him down, and then just having to just wail on him for a long period of time until that fight was stopped as well.
He missed a lot of punches, though, too. Like, I was kind of like, he should have got it called earlier, but, like, he was also hitting the fence.
Like, yeah, see, and I didn't see that. I was watching it on my little screen.
Yeah, I was watching with my family, and it was like he was. Oh no, I was watching that one actually at work at that time. But it was. He didn't land like once he got into the ground, it wasn't like a ton of accuracy, but it probably should have been called sooner, anyways.
He was just making it look like he was throwing those punches. Interestingly enough, I asked on Twitter who we'd like to see him fight next, and I got Jacques Souza because his only loss in the last 7 fights is Yoel Romero. So I thought that might be a steep step up in competition until I actually realized who his only loss was. Apparently, him and Uriah Hall have been calling each other out for a long period of time. To me, I think that's a step back for Derek Brunson. I think he should move forward.
That division's kind of tied up, though.
Yeah, but it depends on which Uriah Hall shows up. If Uriah Hall, I'm going to head kick you and knock you out shows up, that's a great fight. If the Uriah Hall of, like, we're friends, we're just going to spar rather than actually fight shows up, then it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he has tweeted out about this. He has the potential to be a world beater. Oh, yeah. Uriah Hall does. Brunson is consistently good. You know, it's like you know what you're going to get for him, from him. In Uriah Hall, it's kind of like a mixed bag. Like, I feel like he could challenge for the title. He could also be at best top 15 guy for his career. Almost like a Gallard.
Gatekeeper.
Almost like a Gallard. Like, yeah, he's just...
the next Ryan Bader.
I mean, and I step back for him, I guess. It's a name. Like, people don't... and that's the thing. I think it's actually not a step back for him because Uriah Hall is a name. Carnero wasn't. Like, apart from the people that knew, they didn't know how close they were in the rankings or anything like that. But Uriah Hall, people saw him tough. Yeah. They saw his head kick. I mean, I don't think it's a step back for him. I think it gives him a little bit more marketability for the next fight. Plus, they've been calling it out. I say make it.
Yeah. Uriah Hall was supposed to be the man to come in and beat Silva. You remember that? Mm-hmm. He's going to win tough, and he's going to come right for the belt, and he's going to beat Silva. And then he fought...
he lost his first fight, right?
Yeah, and he fought his first fight to Howard.
Yeah.
John Howard. Mm-hmm. And John Howard, I think, got back in the UFC by beating Houston Alexander or something like that. He had been removed and then brought back. Like, it just... The dude has so much potential, and he hasn't been knocked out or anything yet. So I mean, he's got plenty of years ahead of him. But he
also lost to Kevin Gastelum by split decision. Both of those actually.
No, that was the tough finale though.
But then did John Howard, and he came right into the UFC.
So he lost 2 in a row, right?
Split decision though. Let's keep it into perspective. Yeah. Like, it wasn't like he got dominated, but it went from like guy to beat Silva to the guy that's just
if he loses one more fight, he's done. He knew more or less if he lost the 3rd fight in a row, he was going to lose his contract.
So then he went his next loss. So he went win. Chris Lieben, Thiago Santos, Ron Stallings, and then Rafael Natal, split decision loss.
But then he head kicked Gerard Mousasi, didn't he?
He went that Bongos, the guy that just fought.
The guy that just beat Serafian.
And so he beat him with punches, and then he went Gerard Mousasi and
beat him as well.
Yes.
And Gerard Mousasi is no slouch. But once again, you look at Reddit, people are like, it depends on which Mousasi shows up. Mm-hmm. Apparently, Mousasi's been robbed twice in like the last month. They stole his car and they stole his PlayStation 4. And so apparently the UFC gave him a car. He must live next door. It's the damn kids in your neighborhood that stole from him. Yeah, so apparently weird things are happening with him too. It's super strange. If you ever wanted the weird random information about the UFC, just go to the MMA subreddit. You get all kinds of weird things.
I love subreddit. That's what I usually, when I'm tweeting, it's usually from there. So
oh yeah.
We had some talk about stealing. So if you're gonna call me out for like stealing, I apologize. All credit to Reddit.
All credit to Reddit.
And Imager.
And then, of course, Donald Cerrone, Alex Oliveira, super nice competitors. Apparently, Donald Cerrone, the feather that was in his cap, he gave it to Alex Oliveira afterwards. He had it for a long period of time. He said anyone to step up that quick is a cowboy.
Was there any talk of his fine?
No, because
did he not wear anything in?
Apparently,
I couldn't tell.
The rumor is that he put it on the other side of his shorts. He sewed it on the underside. So that's what the rumor is, because he told Ariel Helwani he was going to wear it no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Ariel Helwani said, "Why don't you just sew it on the other side?" And he's like, "It's not the same." And apparently, no one saw it, and the rumor is that he did actually sew it on the inside. So, who knows? The other Yamasaki on this one as well. Apparently, Alex Oliveira tapped. Cerrone kind of let up a little bit, and he said that Oliveira continued to tap. Like, I've lost. I'm not going to.
Did you see him point?
Yeah.
He looked back
and
he pointed.
He pointed, like, yeah. So
that was beautiful, by the way, though.
Oh, yeah. The transition and everything that was there. I don't think Oliveira planned on him.
Taking him down?
Not only taking him down, but I don't think he planned on him trying to submit him. Just like the Shane Carwin-Brock Lesnar fight, where Shane Carwin was like, I didn't plan on that. I didn't plan on Brock Lesnar getting me in a neck. What did he get him in? Arm triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think if you were to ask Oliveira, like, I think he would be like, I didn't expect him to take me down and try and submit me. Because the way that he passed his guard, it didn't look like Oliveira was ready for a jiu-jitsu match.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it looked good, though. Like,
he looked
the
solid.
very first video I ever watched, when I was learning, like, I was trying to learn how to triangle and different things like that. I was on YouTube. It was a guy showing how to, once you get into full mount, like how good you can actually, like how easy it is to actually isolate arms. And from there, you either roll arm bar or you roll, like he did, into a triangle. And that's kind of what actually hooked me onto jiu-jitsu, just seeing like the dichotomy and how things can branch off so quickly. And I wish that it wasn't so, I wish there was a way for like all of us to become more educated on it. I mean, we can take classes and I highly recommend it, but like, as far as like, I wish there was just like tutorials and and breakdowns and stuff like that in between, but you have to have commercials and stuff like that. I get it, but it's so interesting, like how much
you got plenty of commercials when you watch on Fox.
You got so many, and especially if they're quick finishes, which a lot of them were. But like, it's so amazing to be like, well, if they think this, then you do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then that's why I'm gonna get Fight Pass specifically, is to watch the Eddie Bravo Jiu-Jitsu Invitational.
Jiu-Jitsu. I would like to see things. Just like Muay Thai. I would like to see Muay Thai tournaments or K1 where they're not going to the ground and it's fully just striking. And then I would like to see just Jiu-Jitsu where that there's no striking either. I feel like that's
one thing I do appreciate that Bellator's planning on doing is the boxing matches and the kickboxing and then the wrestling and stuff too. There's a lot of promotions that are doing mixed bags. I cut you off. I apologize.
I think they need it. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I feel you no longer, thanks to Fight Pass and thanks to Bellator, you're not going to have to wake up or try and find some weird random stream from Thailand or from somewhere else where you can actually watch these fights. Like, I think that's really cool, and I think it's going to bring a lot more eyes and a lot more knowledge to jiu-jitsu. The hard part is I feel like the only ones that are jiu-jitsu practitioners that are doing well are Damian Maia. And that's really about it in the top 10. I feel like jiu-jitsu is necessary.
Jacare.
But what was his last submission? I don't know. But I feel like most submissions nowadays are rear naked choke or net crank or something like that. Where jiu-jitsu, you have to know jiu-jitsu so you don't get submitted.
Chris Camozzi by armbar.
But I feel like, there are
Machida Rockhold April last year. And then he lost to Yoel, so he's only had one fight since then.
And Camozzi came on that late notice, and everyone kind of knew he was going to get. But his knees broke Joe Riggs' arms.
Oh my gosh!
So anyway,
that was amazing.
Finishing my thoughts. Jiu-jitsu is one of those things that it's necessary, but what you end up having is like Nathan McCoy, who's a wrestler, and Javin Webb, who's a BJJ black belt. I feel like a lot of those high-quality BJJ guys the fights aren't going to the ground long enough for them to actually use their jiu-jitsu. But it also changes when someone's on top of you and you're trying to get something and you're getting punched in the face. So you can't go from submission to submission to submission because you have to protect your face.
Joe Rogan said this, and I agree with it 100%. MMA has advanced more in 20 years than it probably has in the last 2,000 years. And we see it so quickly, I don't think realize it. Last year, if you would have asked me, I would have told you the only practitioner of karate
Lyoto Machida
could even be successful, and he's an outlier. He's the only person I would have said is Lyoto Machida. Nobody else can. Karate is dead. It's not an actual martial art. And Connor's not outright a karate guy, but he has a karate stance, right? It's different now. There's so many different karate guys. Gunnar Nelson, pretty much everybody at SBG. They've got
Wonder Boy,
yeah,
Darren Cruikshank, who's not necessarily top level, but he's still karate.
You know, and that's the thing is it's like MMA goes in waves, and then sometimes it's the wrestling and ground and pound that takes over, and there's going to be like a new way of thought. You'll have guys like Greg Jackson coming up with ideas to exploit holes in that and that's the beautiful thing about MMA. That's why I think, Conor McGregor at 155, regardless at some point, is going to lose. If he doesn't do it, then that puts him John Jones status, because there's so many ways for you to lose at that weight class.
It's a very interesting thing to see the changes back in the day where there was a transition, the UFC 1s and 2s, where there were wrestlers and then there was BJJ, and the wrestlers would take people down and ground and pound them no matter how big they were. And then the BJJ guys would allow them to take them down, and then they would tap them out. You know what I mean? And then it went from that to the wrestlers just dominating, and then K1 and those guys, like the guys coming from K1, the kickboxers, Overaim, and those guys just dominating with their striking. And then you had Chuck Liddell, who learned sprawling in his defense from his Kempo and those type of things to not get taken down so he could strike. And he had very much a counter punch type way of going, and that's when they beat Tito Ortiz and Couture, who came from wrestling backgrounds. And then striking came in, and then you still have the Rashad Evans, and Dennis Bermudez just showed, if you have a wrestling background, you can still take people down. It's just a very dynamic way of fighting, and the whole wrestler versus striker doesn't really exist anymore.
Mm-hmm. It really doesn't, because it's all about
unless they're from the UK. And then it definitely does.
I don't know. I think jiu-jitsu is going to be just fine. You're going to see more guys coming up that they're doing their jiu-jitsu. You still see triangle submissions.
Everybody has to do their jiu-jitsu. Everybody is so good at jiu-jitsu nowadays that it somewhat not nullifies, but it prevents people from being able to dominate with just jiu-jitsu, because people know enough to not get themselves in positions. High level, we're talking like top 10.
I just feel like there's going to be eventually a quote unquote, revitalization of jiu-jitsu, where you're going to have guys like Damian Maia that will submit you.
But then you look at Vinny Magnolaris, or whatever his name is, Magnolaris. He, in all physical specimen, BJJ world champion, yet can't compete in the top 10 because he can't strike. And
that's the thing. Again, I think it's more, you're going to learn guys that learn which way to circle, which way to go away from kicks, and then when to shoot. And people get too comfortable in their discipline and they forget. And then everybody's like, oh, look what Connor's doing. You keep distance, you take your strikes when you can, and you don't go to the ground. But then it kind of just they don't practice on it so much. And then one guy from Greg Jackson's gym is going to come in and be like, no, I'm just going to take this guy down and I'm going to ground and pound him. He's not going to know what to do. And I just feel like it's just waves. It's just waves. And that's what's the beautiful thing about this is that's why I think at this point it's funny to say something's dead, like a certain technique is dead, and it's just not time for it.
One, you no longer train boxing or BJJ or Muay Thai, you train MMA. Mm-hmm. And this is a conversation that I don't know if we've had on the podcast, but I know that we've had in real life, where you no longer train one discipline, you train MMA. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool to think. Brian Page was talking about his kids today. They're 15 years old and training, and it's like, I'd like my kids to train, and maybe not striking until they get, above the age of, 17, 18. But at the same time, rolling jiu-jitsu from 3-4 years old, like...
I'm actually going to, when I have kids, I'm going to pretty much do what Chelt's son said he was going to do. I think that's about the...
You have to explain a little.
I was going to. It's
Okay,
like the most genius way of probably looking at like bringing kids up in sports, because you can't reach any level without a certain level. You can't be competitive without a certain level of like aggression and just desire. And if the kid doesn't have it and they're thrown into it, they're just going to kind of resent it. So he was talking about like you put them into aerobics and gymnastics and get a core, and then if they show an aptitude for or a competitive nature, they can either continue with gymnastics and be competitive that way, or if they want more of a contact sport or physicality, you can get them into football, basketball, MMA, whatever it is that they want to do at that point. They at least have enough athletic base and flexibility, and they're not taking damage like early on.
Well, and cognitive discipline, like being able to say, this is what I have to do to train, this is what I have to do to get better, and staying calm. I think jiu-jitsu is a much better base than wrestling. I think wrestlers are stronger in MMA in the long run, but I think jiu-jitsu trains you to be okay with whatever position you're in and to figure out what your next move is. I believe that wrestling does the same thing, but like they always used to say, you put a wrestler on his back and he doesn't know what to do, because he goes down. They call it a point. They stand up and they get going again. And so I think
in wrestling, if they go down and they're on their back, the match is over.
Yeah, as soon as you pin the second shoulder, they're done.
Yeah, but they don't get back up and do it again. It's over.
Don't they have several? Don't they have 3 rounds? Oh,
Once
if you're pinned, you're
it's
done.
over.
Oh. Well, never mind then.
I'm gonna look that up because now, like, I've in my head, I'm very secure in that, but now I'm second guessing myself.
I thought it was a point-based system. Just
it is.
Like, yeah,
it is. It's all about control, though. Takedowns, reversals.
If you push them out of the ring, you get certain points, and then I thought you had to get a certain amount of points, and if you got pinned, then you stood them back up and they went for the next round until
a pin or fall is a victory condition in various forms of wrestling.
In various forms. So maybe I'm looking at high school wrestling, not college wrestling, or not like super competitive, where they would beep and then they would get up and they would go again. And shoot, maybe I was just watching Austin wrestle that handicapped kid. Where they just allowed him to just keep going. They're like, okay, bud, just keep going.
Or the blind kid. He wrestled the blind kid,
yeah,
too.
That's what it was. Maybe wasn't it yet.
But no, I understand what you're saying, though, where it's like if you're on your back, you almost, it breeds maybe that defeatist mentality. It's like, oh, yeah, I got pinned. I lost. I'm done.
Just like karate. If you get knocked down in karate,
you just get back up.
You just get back up and you separate. And so it's a lot of those karate people don't necessarily have the biggest killer instinct, because you have to, like, if you watch the Pride days when you could soccer kick and you could do all those weird things, which I'm kind of okay with, they attack,
Doesn't make
man.
sense to me.
They attack. Watching Vanderlei Silva and those guys, when they knock somebody down, Shogun, those guys are still known for throwing illegal knees and almost throwing soccer kicks, because it is ingrained in them to just go for it. And when you watch karate people, a lot of times they're not as aggressive, because in their mind, that's when they step back. And so that you have to break that barrier of that mentality of, okay, now take a step back, you have to keep attacking. But with that, talking about illegal kicks.
Yeah, so the one thing that we wanted to talk about this week in particular, we're trying to do a topic a week, just because it kind of actually helps us too. Like, it made me more interested to see what it actually what you could give point deductions for. And I came across something like 7 things you can get point deductions for.
So let's get into the history of point deductions. Obviously, UFC 1, UFC 2, so obviously there was no rules in the first UFCs. The very first point deduction was ever given at UFC 33.
I didn't know that.
I read that actually today.
And also just kind of some background, there are unified rules across all disciplines in the U.S. And the only thing that's different is Bellator and tournament status. You can't elbow, which makes sense, because if you get cut, you can't.
What type of elbow, though? Are we
any
talking
elbow?
So you can't.
If you get cut,
elbow,
you can't continue.
Downward
yeah,
elbow.
if you get cut, you can't continue in the tournament.
Huh.
So like you can't get stitches and go back out. You'll open your stitches up again. So Bellator, like anywhere else, it's unified rules at this point. If it's in the United States, and you told me that ONE FC, they still have soccer kicks.
Yeah, there was actually a soccer kick knockout this weekend, I believe.
I hate it.
I love it. Well, and the thing is the guy realizes where he's at. So they fight, he knocks him down, and instead of going to the ground with him, he just kicks him. Well, because the guy keeps trying to get away. And so he's like, instead of going and tackling him, he just soccer kicks him twice, and it's over.
No, man.
But think about it. Someone's really good at jiu-jitsu. You're not going to want to have to try and ground and pound him. I'd rather just kick him in the face and be done.
Yeah, but it goes into safety 100%. Like, blunt, like that's just blunt to the head. Like, I know how hard people can kick a soccer ball.
But yeah, so you think a kick to the head is harder or has the ability to be more rough than, say, the Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping drop punch?
Well, I mean, that's happened once.
There's a couple times, actually.
Drop punch?
The Dan Henderson drop punch?
Yeah,
there's a couple of those type punches that have happened in MMA where people are like, that should have been called before that dude got, like...
Most of the time they miss and they break their wrist. They punch the canvas. Like, whereas there's no second guessing or soccer kicking somebody in the head. You're just going to go right in. Like, what if you miss? Nothing. You wind back up again and keep kicking them. Like, it's... No, man, you want to talk about, like, old men fighting and possibly getting punched in the head and killed?
Yeah, I agree. You're more likely to get
you're
killed.
You're going to get killed.
Kicked in the head.
Yeah, like, the force that you can generate from that is way worse in my opinion. I was just hitting the balls 2 weeks ago from a soccer kick.
But could you really full on soccer kick someone like you can kick a soccer ball at full speed with no other contact, with no other movement?
I could generate a lot of power from just standing still and kicking a soccer ball still. Not like a wind up. Like maybe, possibly, like if you want to talk something that's comparable to a Dan Henderson thing, if you knock them back, like imagine if we had soccer kicks and he had that punch that Dada was kind of out on, and he does that little thing where he winds off and goes up against the cage. Think about Kimbo just running up and kicking him right in the head up against the cage.
Kind of killed him, yeah.
Like it's, and I think, anyways, we're talking point deductions. So in ONE FC, soccer kicks are still allowed. They're Korean based, right? That's why they're going so hard after Ben Henderson.
I believe so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're definitely in that part of the world. So let's get into some numbers. Looking this up, interesting thing. Like I said, the first point deduction was given at UFC 33. Since that time, in matches or fights that were decided by a decision by the judges, there's been 20 point deductions in those matches since UFC 33.
There's only been 20 total?
There's only been 20 total. This is since 2013, so let's get that. Obviously, Matt Mitrione went to decision. No, it didn't go to decision. But, yes, there's been 20 total point deductions in decision-based fights. Only 6 of those have actually had any kind of cause or any kind of loss or no contest based on a point deduction. So most of the times the other people were winning by so much that it ended up coming to either a split decision or a decision that they won.
Gray Maynard, Frankie Edgar 2 was one of them, right?
I don't think that there was a point deduction. We got a list right here, though.
There was a point deduction because they tied.
I don't believe so. Let's see here. So we got a list here. Stephan Bonner, Igor Prejic, Travis Brown, Chet Congo, Matt Hamill, Keith Jardine, Johnny Hendricks, TJ Grant, Dong Young Kim, TJ Grant. I do not see. No. Unless they fought after 2013.
No, they didn't.
Yep. So it doesn't look like it. So the last one, Tim Elliott versus Jared Papartsian. That was in 2012. So this must have been at the very beginning of 2013. So you might be correct, but I don't remember a point deduction. So it's interesting to see Dan Miragliotta has never given a point deduction. We have a hold on this. Let's actually.
This is bugging me because I swear there was. Maybe it was he had a 10-8 round because there was one where Frankie was like crazy like I think it was just gonzo.
Yeah,
first round I think. Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So there was no point deductions between 2003 and 2005. Herb Dean is the leading point docker, which makes kind of sense because he is everyone's favorite ref.
He's just a nice guy.
John McCarthy, Mario Yamasaki, and Steve Mazzagatti all trail with 4 apiece.
Have you ever seen when the refs go back and explain the rules?
Mm-mm.
That was part of it because they were talking about when Connor was punching Gray Maynard in the back of the head, or not Gray Maynard, excuse me, Dennis Seaver, and he actually wasn't. So they were showing like it's like the ear line back, and he was hitting him like right here, and so he seems to make
the mohawk, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He seems to make it very clear what's legal and what's not, and that's why I think and I haven't seen other ones, to be fair. I haven't seen other arrests. I tuned into, I think, the Embedded that the UFC did. I watched that one and just saw him explain it to both parties.
It's very interesting. So low kicks are the number 1 point deduction out of all of them, which I think is very interesting. I think grabbing the cage is right up there as well.
Well, the thing is like low kicks is, in my opinion, it's so obvious, like when somebody goes low because you see the cup move. Whereas, and this is why I think they should just do it, like if you poke somebody in the eye, you should have an automatic point deduction, because I don't think you can really tell. Like if you're going like this, but then you're also going to have guys start faking it, and that's where I get kind of nervous. So I almost think if it's something like, and I know this was a low blow, but maybe they institute instant replay too. And if you go in,
and that's one of the big discussions.
I don't see a problem with going in and seeing did he go low against Ken Shamrock, and if he can continue, then put the clock back where it was and go.
He should get 5 minutes. So there's 2 ways to look at the instant replay, and I thought about this as well, kind of jumping ahead. But if you can look at an instant replay, even looking up at the Jumbotron and being like, cool, I can see that there was something or that there was nothing. If there's nothing, you've missed 30 seconds. You take a point away and say there was nothing there. We're taking a point away. That's on the list that we'll get into. You take the point away and you keep fighting. If you see something, that person gets 5 minutes. In that 5 minutes, you can review it again. If it's bad enough and intentional enough for a point, take a point. If it was completely accidental, you leave it. With that, I think that's a big thing. Along with that, though, I think actually giving a fighter their full 5 minutes, which is hardly ever done, should be something that should be instituted no matter what. You shouldn't have a referee following them around asking if they're good to fight.
I think they have to, because in the rules it states that it has to be ready to go as soon as possible. But they do let them know every time you have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've only heard that every so often.
The problem on this
5 minutes.
The problem on this one is more the fans. Anytime something like that happens and there's any delay, they just start booing, which makes no sense to me. That's the stupidest shit in the world.
That's that person's paycheck. That's their win. That's everything that there is. If with the Matt Mitrione, which is the perfect example, he should have had the opportunity to actually rest, figure out what was going on, talk to his corner. As soon as his eye started to puff up and he got freaking eye poked a second time, there should have been some kind of corner stoppage where his corner could have said, hey, we're doing this as a no contest. We're not going to let you go back out there. We'll just take the no contest or a disqualification and we'll figure it out after this. But then the MMA community boos that, and everyone says that he's a pussy and that he just didn't
which is
want to
funny because he's in the cage. I think
Yeah.
it's the funniest thing to call MMA fighters at all pussies, even if it's somebody that runs and dodges and it's like they're in the cage still. They're there. Like it's just like go in there if you think if you're better. Like there's so much discipline. Like there's so much writing on the line. To say that somebody's a pussy is just the dumbest thing in the world.
No, I agree 100%. And it's just interesting to me. Grabbing the cages up there. Like you should only be told once not to grab the cage, and if you touch it again, you should have a point deducted.
That one's scary though, just in general, because you could break your fingers.
Oh, because usually you put your fingers in the cage when you don't want to get taken down.
Mm-hmm.
So you're trying to grab onto anything that you can.
Yeah, like think about somebody going for a slam, and if your finger gets it could tear fingers off. Like think about how much leverage John Jones had behind when he almost ripped his toe off.
Oh yeah,
a freak accident could happen, man. You're losing a finger, and then we don't have a problem with eye pokes. Maybe maybe that should be the thing.
That's very.
You can't fight with fingers.
So the latest two that I can think of points deducted, one from the UFC with Matt Mitrione. The second one was from the WSOF. One of the fighters, Muhammad, did not have a professional mouthpiece. And this is not the first time I've seen this on an undercard where like a local fighter just doesn't buy like a.
Well, they're expensive.
Mouthpiece. Oh yeah, they're very expensive.
If you get a doctor, shock doctor, they're expensive.
And so he couldn't keep his mouthpiece in, lost it twice, I think 3 times by the end of the fight, and they deducted a point. He still won by decision. But it was really annoying. You could see him as he would breathe, it would go in and out of his, out of his teeth. I mean, he could easily break his teeth, get his teeth broken off. He could have a lot of terrible things happen if he does lose that mouth guard.
But they're insured for $25,000
for their teeth. I didn't know that.
Those cheap ones, they usually say something like that, which I don't know. I would like to see the fine print on it, but I've bought a number of them for football that they're always like guaranteed $25,000 for. And it's like, I highly doubt that they would pay for my dental.
And then they'll ask you, well, did you see the stipulation that it said no contact sports?
This was purely cosmetic.
Yeah.
This was
for electroshock therapy. We don't know why in the world that you were playing sports with it. But we've got a list here as well of the fouls. Obviously, those are the main ones that have always been kind of there. So you have eye pokes, you have low blows, you have grabbing the cage, you have blows to the back of the head. Those are the main ones that we usually see. What are some of the other ones that you remember? I've got the list here in front of me, but do you remember any hilarious ones?
Grabbing the shorts, the gloves, swearing at the profane language to anybody in the cage, attacking a downed opponent or one that's being tended to by the referee.
Could you imagine though, someone being attended to by the referee and someone going in and hitting them? Like the worst that we've seen is the after the bell, which is the Paul Daly, and he was booted immediately from the UFC. But anyway, keep going.
Did you see the Ronda Rousey one? I didn't notice that. I rewatched that fight when she hit Holly Holmes after the bell.
She swung. I didn't know if she actually got her. Did she?
I don't know. Holly didn't make too much of a fuss about it, so I'm not going to. I'm bringing it up. But
and everyone claims that no one heard it. But I think that happens a lot where people claim that they didn't hear the bell.
Well, there was that big one with
Paul Harris, wasn't it?
No. Well, he's always holding after the bell. That's why he got cut from his last 2 promotions. But no, there was that one. Was it Dwayne that came out? It was the Chad Mendez one where they were fighting. I think it was Conor McGregor or was it Jose Aldo? No, it was the Jose Aldo one. Because he did something illegal to Jose Aldo, and they were saying it was retaliation that Jose Aldo hit him after the belt. And Dwayne was like, no, man. Like, no, we couldn't hear it. It was fine, So, I mean, that one's kind of like ambiguous. If they're being attended to by the referee and you guys... I can't even you get a point deduction for that? No, you get cut. I don't even know why that's in there for point deduction.
So here are my favorite ones. Fish hooking.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorites.
One that the point in any orifice.
Yeah.
There's one in there that says any orifice. And you ever heard of checking the oil?
Yeah.
They're always doing that. Does that not count?
No.
How does that not count?
No, because they claim they're trying just to get the underhook. But yeah, they definitely jam a thumb up there. Clawing, pinching, twisting of flesh, or grabbing the clavicle. So I imagine just
oh my
titty
gosh,
twisters. The clavicle. Ugh. This is the interesting one that is never called, and you wonder what it is. The use of abusive language in a fighting area.
Diaz.
Yeah, Diaz. There's actually several fighters that there was a Torres kid on the undercard at the WSOF.
You're going to see, we talked about this before, you're going to see it come into effect if somebody ever says it to the referee, much like if anybody goes at the referee in traditional sports, they get kicked out, right? You're going to see that. The other one is if they start using racist, homophobic, or in any way, shape, or form.
Slanderous.
If they're starting to say that and the other fighter, say that Cerrone was to drop the F-bomb or something like that, right? If he says that and then the other guy comes out and says that, the UFC is going to start being really strict about it, which is interesting though, because the referees are not employed by the UFC. So why is it
athletic commission?
So why is it? Maybe that wouldn't matter. I wonder what the exact stipulation is.
Yeah. So one of the things that they should also do it on is being timid. So obviously being too timid is going to cause a lot of different issues. If the fighters aren't actually fighting, I've seen people that have been threatened with this, that you need to fight, especially John McCarthy will tell people, hey, you need to fight. You need to fight. One interesting one is throat strikes. So obviously you can't hit someone directly in the throat intentionally or grab their trachea, which is interesting to me because what's known as the raper's choke is not against the rules.
I thought that was.
Which is not. So you can't grab the trachea, which is just a fall
Or
on
punch
grab.
him in the throat.
Or punch him in the throat.
Deliberately punch him in the throat.
Well, because you imagine, what do you learn as a kid? If anyone ever attacks you, just jam them right in the throat, or hit their nose through their skull. Those are like the two like defense things that little.
Well,
kids
they have the acronym for the women. It's like the foot, groin, and then the throat, right? Isn't that the thing? Like you stomp knee or elbow or knee in the groin and then go to the throat. But you can foot stomp, which I think is stupid.
Blatant disregard to referees' rules. I've watched a Brazilian get yelled at for that, where he was like, "You got to listen to me. If you don't listen to me, I'm going to deduct a point." And I think I've actually seen a point deducted, where there's a Brazilian acting like they didn't understand what the ref was saying for so long that he was finally like, "Nope, I've told you like 5 times. We're not dealing with this any longer."
So this is the thing that I wanted to discuss on this is how we think it should be implemented.
Mm-hmm.
I think pretty much it should be open for a first time offense. It can be deducted, like a point can be deducted, especially if there's impairment that comes, so low blow or eye gouging. If there's impairment that happens in any way, shape, or form, I think they should automatically get a point. I think that if you started deducting points instantly for eye gouges, it would stop.
Mm-hmm.
It would stop. And if it didn't,
it's the same people that continually eye gouge. John Jones, Travis Brown.
How many times does he eye gouge though?
I think he got Teixeira twice. I think in almost every John Jones fight, there's at least one eye poke.
No.
Unless they don't go one round like Lyoto Machida.
No.
Glover Teixeira, he got twice.
Well, and Jones isn't trying to keep Machida at distance. They're both just like circling.
Yeah, but it is that. Joe Rogan actually talked about this after the Matt Mitrione fight, and he said any eye poke should be an immediate deduction. And his words more or less were, if you take something from them, if you take something from one opponent, which is the eye gouge, then something needs to be taken from the other opponent, which is the one who delivered the eye gouge.
Going low blows are interesting to me because I don't think it affects your performance. It does immediately, but
I think you can shake it off.
Well, I mean, literally, like I said, I was hit super hard. I was playing keeper, and oh my gosh, it hurt so bad. And I needed a couple minutes, but the game didn't stop for me. And I was fine after a few minutes. So
this is saying we're at an hour.
Yeah, we're killing it right now.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
So I don't know if immediately point deduction for that. Give them their time. If there's constant infringement, yes. I think eye gouges, though, unless... I think that there also should be a review if there is time taken to see if they were faking it or not. Because I don't want it to start being that there was an eye gouge, people holding their eye because somebody I don't know. I just feel like there should be a review of those to see who's losing a point. But regardless, in that instance where it's thought that an eye poke happened, there should be a review of the footage.
Well, because there's a couple times an eye poke has happened, but it's with a knuckle of a pinky, where they're like, "Oh, I got poked in the eye," and then they show it on the screen, and it's actually not an eye poke at all. They've been clipped with
the seams on gloves a lot of the times too. That little where it's sewn, where it pokes out a little bit, those can cut. Those are going that quick.
Let's talk about gloves real quick.
Let's do it.
Just briefly. So I was looking at the difference between the Pride gloves and the UFC gloves because a lot of people say, hey, there were no eye pokes in Pride. One of the reasons that they claim that there were no eye pokes in Pride is because of the curvature of the glove in Pride was actually more, it would actually bend at the knuckles more. So you couldn't fully extend your fingers like you can in the UFC gloves. One of the major complaints was the jiu-jitsu guys and the judo guys were claiming they couldn't grip as well with those gloves. However, with the UFC gloves, because you can fully extend your fingers, a lot of people are saying that that's where the eye pokes start, and that what they should do is go back to the Pride type gloves where you can.
I disagree.
I disagree too. I didn't really necessarily like the Pride gloves, but a lot of people do.
I mean, it's something to look at, but I disagree. Again, I think it's more deductions. I think if, regardless, in that instance that somebody's claiming eye poke, somebody's losing a point, you're gonna have people not pretend, and you're gonna have people like stop doing open palm things or open fist.
Which I don't think you should do anyway. I mean, you're setting your distance to a point, but if you ever put an open hand to towards someone's face, what do you expect to happen?
That's a little different, but open anytime, like, because like if you're blocking a jab, like your hand's open, because you have more surface area. So I'm just saying, like, there are times when it should be open, in the face open. Not standing up.
And
like,
John Jones is like the number one person for putting your freaking extended fingers in somebody's face.
And I mean, the oblique kick's so effective anyways. Why are you using... You can blow their knee out. You don't need to gouge their eyes. The one thing I was going to ask you about, and I've always thought about this because I asked Aldo, my old kickboxing coach, about this, like right when I was training there, and I broke my leg playing soccer, and I had a plate put in my leg. And you with a medical background, I was wondering if this would even be feasible, almost like a Wolverine. What if you just put titanium plates in your leg? How would they even like stop you from doing that? Because I have a titanium plate. It's not on my shin though.
I don't know. I don't know if they need it to be removed. Why is it still in?
I had the option of pulling mine out or not.
I think usually they take them back out. And I think the athletic commission would look into you.
Because I asked Aldo, and I was like, well, what if it was on my shin bone? Because he's like, oh, it was a good thing it wasn't your tibia. And I was like, well, what if it would have been? And it been right on the face of it. And I wouldn't even need to body armor myself. I could just use titanium to kick people. And he's like, just shrugged his shoulders. He's like, I was like, there's no check for that. And he's like,
They would have to have an athletic commission check, is what I would guess, but I don't know. But what they will do, though, the Muay Thai guys they'll do body hardening, and they'll just hit sticks on their legs.
Or they'll kick trees, poles. But can you imagine not having to do that and just being like, I'm just going to take a little surgery?
Yeah.
Titanium plates.
Adamantium. You just Wolverine.
Can you imagine, though?
No.
That'd be the worst thing
Let's get back to the important thing. So
that's safety, and this is very poignant.
Let's get to the what. So what would you do? You wouldn't do an immediate point. You would do some kind of replay system for a foul.
If it's blatant, you can take a point.
Right off the bat?
Yeah. I think regardless, in the event of an eye poke,
you take one.
Somebody's losing a point.
The guy that got poked in the eye, his face shouldn't have been there. He should have moved faster.
Well, he's either faking it or he was poked in the eye.
And so the review...
And I almost think maybe, and I know that the way that they have it set up is the one guy that decides. They don't have it split up too much as the judge, or excuse me, the referee. The referee. The judges do not take points away. It's administered by the referee. But I almost think maybe have another referee on hand that actually can look at the footage. So
like a sideline ref that can watch the footage and tell.
And so they're looking at the footage and the replay to see.
But then you got to pay that guy.
So,
no, I know, but I'm just saying, I'm devil's advocate, but I agree with you.
It can be one guy that's there all night that's reviewing, that can review him if needs be.
And it should be from the opposing camp.
Yeah, whoever's the opposing camp.
He should look at the tape.
But no, I think that in the event of an eye poke and then low blows, they can also be reviewed to a certain extent if they're claiming it. I mean, like I said, I think a little bit more obvious because you see the whole cup go up, you know?
Mm-hmm. You can see within a very short amount of time. And of course, obviously, that's the referee for making sure that he's in the right positions to see what he can. Yamasaki got in the way when someone was actually trying to run away. He was right behind them and he got bumped into. That was very unprofessional.
That's what I worry about the 135ers because they're all over the place. I'm like, you got to keep your distance with those guys, man. They go crazy.
But so we're not going to, we'll get into the main fight of the next card. We won't talk about too much. I'll give you my picks real quick.
I like the co-main too.
So I got Francisco Rivera over Brad Pickett. I've got Martin Svensson over David Timur, who is also on The Ultimate Fighter. I've got Tom Breeze over Neda Nakamura. I think he's been set up. Tom Breeze is undefeated. I think they're just giving him a feeder to get his first park. Rustam Kabalov and Norman Park, I think, is going to be a really good fight. Mm-hmm. I like Norman Park in that one, even though the Russians are super good at what they do. You said Jared Masasi, Talis Ladish. You're really interested in that one?
Mm-hmm. It's a nice 185er.
And who do you think wins?
I'm going to go Thales.
I got Masasi. I think Latest is a gatekeeper.
Nuh-uh. He's making a run.
Let's hope.
Starting this weekend,
He can fight Anderson Silva again and see if he doesn't get his knee blown out.
That'd be dope. They can make that next fight.
Anderson Silva, Michael Bisping.
Anderson Silva versus the pillow fight.
The cross-eyed pillow fighter.
I would love to see him fight Dominic Cruz. See who can hit softer.
I like Michael Bisping. I've been a Michael Bisping fan since the beginning, since everyone hated him on The Ultimate Fighter.
I don't remember that. I remember you specifically saying you didn't like him, and that's why I went and looked up stuff.
I like him.
I don't think that's true.
That's not the discussion we're having here.
Good thing we started the podcast so I can go back and listen to these things.
Yes, you can. Oh, wait. I said it on the podcast?
No, you didn't. You said it years ago. We didn't have it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say. No. Yeah.
Anyways.
Nonetheless.
Defend pillow fighter.
I like him now. I don't think he wins this fight. However, I think he could win this fight based on where Anderson Silva is in his career. If he exacts the exact same game plan as Nick Diaz, where he just pokes and gets out of the way and then strikes and gets out of the way. I don't think obviously he's as good of a striker as Nick Diaz is, but I think Nick Diaz showed you how to beat Anderson Silva. Keep him at range, let him come at you, punch and leave. And Nick Diaz did exactly what Carlos Condit did to him, and Carlos Condit also won that fight. Anderson Silva obviously won the Nick Diaz fight, but most people said that Nick Diaz had actually won that fight on points.
The pillow fighter has very good footwork, and so I don't think he's going to get into deep water like people do with Anderson. I think he's going to be a little bit harder to gauge timing and distance. And Anderson's been off for close to 2 years.
Yeah. And his speed's probably not as quick. He didn't look as fast and as fluid against Nick Diaz. And
he's coming off a gnarly, I don't know, just the whole. Well, one, I feel like Bisping does have the pillows in the cage, and then Anderson Silva has them from his camp. I'm so sick of hearing the whole thing of no, you can't say anything to us or we're not going to show up to pressers. It's stop, man.
Yeah.
Stop. Just go take the Viagra thing like a man and just go deal with it. It's part of the promotion.
Anderson Silva got him back pretty well, just not in person.
That's a problem. Go do it in person. Who cares? What did he say?
The video that you posted on our Twitter.
What did I post?
The Instagram of how you actually do a head kick.
Oh yeah,
the accuracy of a head kick.
Yeah, where he hit his training partner.
Michael Bisping kicked his training partner right in the face, and you saw he didn't knock him out.
No,
he didn't. He's got pillow feet too, apparently. So you've got Anderson Silva. That's apparent. How does he win? I think if he wins, sorry to ask you something and then cut you off. I think if he wins, it's by head kick.
No, I think it's TKO.
Which
he just starts laying third. I'm gonna say third. So he starts laying it on him. I think he'll catch him with a straight jab, and I think he'll kind of daze him and then just kind of TKO.
Do you think the winner of this gets a title shot?
Do you think I don't want to see either of them fight for the title. I don't know if they do. I don't want to see it.
So Yoel Romero's still out, and Jacques Souza is fighting.
I feel like Yoel Romero is going to beat that.
Let's hope he beats it soon so he can go fight Luke Rockhold. And then Sousa's fighting.
How do you know he's going to beat Luke Rockhold?
No, I said
how do you know
that he goes and fights him?
Him and Weidman are fighting first, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Weidman, I think Weidman made some mistakes, but I still think he has a shot against Rockhold. If I was going to put money on it, Rockhold wins. Yeah. But with that being said, I don't want to see either of them fight for a title. They both need to put some more wins together. And I don't like Bisping. He's always saying how great he is and everything, and he's a great talker. I love him as a heel, as a guy that he did Conor before Conor did. Yeah, he just didn't back it up.
Where he was actually telling the crowd to go F themselves. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like me, go yourself.
Yeah, I don't want him to not be in the UFC, but he's a guy I love to hate.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's true.
But I don't want to see him fight for a title.
I'd like to see him go against Rockhold or Weidman. Rockhold knocked him out with a high kick, which is kind of why I think that Anderson will just emulate that same thing. I don't think he has very good kick defense. Once again, as always, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes or YouTube, however you're watching this. Make sure you follow at One Speed MMA, as well as Flying Smitty and at Capital W, even though we do _24. Even though we do
Just
most of our
follow us
talking
on One
through.
Speed. You don't need to. You can look me up if you want to. You can link from our Twitter page.
And just remember,
I'm on that one more than my own, anyways.
just remember to subscribe and to follow. That's the most important things. And once again, don't go 30%. Always go 1 speed.